it is time to talk about gear. The video you've probably all been waiting for, I guess. But I don't really know how to start this video because one thing that I don't really want to do is just make a flat list of all the different talents in the game, because a lot of these are still subject to change, or they don't even have finished logos yet, so I don't really want to talk about too much specifics. Instead, I think I'll go over the bigger picture, the way it works, the way that the gear and the weapons and everything have been reworked, and then I'll fill it in with some examples from the footage that I got. So for this video, I guess we'll start off talking about the weapons, something that I think we're all pretty familiar with. We've talked about weapons in the Division 2 a couple times before on the channel here. Then we'll move over to the gear, which has been reworked quite a bit from how it worked in the Division 1. And then last up, we'll talk about the skills as well, which also work in a completely different way. So yeah, let's begin with the weapons. Just like in the Division 1, every high-end weapon has 3 weapon talents. As I talked about in the past, these won't just be 3 random talents though, like we had it in the first game. You always have 1 active talent, as they're calling it, 1 weapon handling talent, and 1 holster talent. We sort of have a different category for each of the different talents on our weapon. Now, the active talent can pretty much be whatever. 15% damage against targets that are on fire, landing body shots to get more headshot damage, the first bullet of a magazine does more damage, that sort of stuff. Usually, these talents are a little more interactive with the player, so the player has to do something on purpose to get value out of the talent, which is why they're called the active talents. And for these type of talents, you also have sort of an indicator next to your weapon, sort of like a UI thing to know when it is active and when it is not. Now, the second talent that you can find on the weapon is the weapon handling talent, and this is something that's more in the direction of a general stat boost, not really something that you have to activate. It can be increased accuracy, increased stability, more optimal range, a faster reload speed, higher magazine capacity, and surprisingly also a higher rate of fire, which technically also increases your DPS. So it's more of a passive weapon handling thing. And then last up we have the holster talent, which most of the time is a talent that is only active when you have your weapon holstered, which might sound weird at first, but this is actually a nice and a fun addition to add more talents to any given weapon, because of course keep in mind you have a total of 3 weapons, 2 primary ones and of course 1 pistol. So each weapon essentially has 4 talents, because you have the active talent, the weapon handling talent, and also the holster talent from both of your other weapons. These talents could be things such as, while holstered, this weapon increases weapon swap speed by 10%. Or while holstered, this weapon's handling talent is applied to the currently active weapon as well. Or while equipped, skills deployed from cover are buffed. Yeah, as I said just a minute ago, most of the holster talents actually apply when you have the weapon holstered, but some of them also apply when you have the weapon equipped. So that means that in some cases you can get up to 5 talents working on any given weapon. Now in the Division 1 we had to unlock these talents with main stats. We had to get either enough firearms, stamina or electronics to unlock a specific talent. But we don't really have main stats anymore in the Division 2, right? And yet, there are still ways that you have to unlock these talents, but it isn't like they showed us in the E3 gameplay. The game has actually changed quite a bit since back in June, when they showed the game off for the first time. Right now, every stat that you can get on your weapon, your gear, your mods, all that stuff, all those stats, they always fall into a certain category. You have 3 categories. We have this round thing, which is usually a damage-orientated stat roll. You have the battery, which indicates skill power or utility type of stuff. And you have this shield, which then buffs the player's survivability. Now, again, you shouldn't confuse these 3 logos with main stats, because simply getting a logo of any kind doesn't increase your raw damage, your raw health, or your raw skill power. These logos are more just helpers for the players, indicators, to show you that a certain stat roll falls into a certain category. So for example, 5% weapon damage, you're still just going to get 5% weapon damage, but it falls into the round shield category, so to speak. And these categories, they become important if you want to unlock talents on your weapon, because more often than not, the player is required to have at least a certain amount of any of these categories to unlock a talent. So for example, you need 5 stat rolls that fall into the shield category to unlock X talent, or 7 stat rolls that fall into the round shield category to unlock another talent, that sort of stuff. And this is actually, I think it is a very big step up from what we saw at E3. And here's why. At E3, most of the talents required the player to have a specific stat for each gun talent. A quick example is for this gun talent that was called Kill Confirmed, which gave the player more damage, but to unlock the talent, you would need to have a base headshot damage that is at least 140%. Now, 140% headshot damage, that's a lot. Of course, if you take a sniper, that already gives you 90% to begin with, because snipers do come with a lot of headshot damage. But even in those cases, when you go with the sniper, you still need to get 50% more headshot damage just to unlock this talent. So you're almost instantly forced to get a specific scope that has headshot damage to get certain rolls on your gear. And that's, in my opinion, it really limits the build diversity because, you know, with this system, there's no doubt in my mind that it will result in 1 or 2 perfect builds that allow for this talent to be active. And then in any other build, this talent cannot be activated. So, you know, that puts the game and the whole system sort of in this place where you're probably going to have 5 or 6 builds that utilize the best talents in the game, and that's it. And then there's no wiggle room to change much, because if you do, then you're not going to be able to unlock those talents. And by changing the talents to be unlocked based on a whole category instead of a very specific stat roll, that instantly opens up a whole lot more possibilities. So if I wanted to highlight anything from my play session in this video, it would be this change, because this might be one of the most important changes to the game that I've seen thus far. It's actually pretty huge. Now, as far as the weapon mods go, I think most people know how this works by now, because they've already showed this off a couple of times. Weapon mods, they're basically no longer items that you can find in the general loot pool, but instead you have to unlock weapon mods by playing campaign missions, collecting SHD tech, and then spending that SHD tech at the quartermaster inside the White House. Basically what we talked about yesterday. And then once you have a mod, you will always have it. It will always be there in your inventory, and you can equip it on as many different weapons at the same time as you like. So you don't really have to grind for those weapon mods anymore. Once you complete the story and all the side activities and all that stuff, you'll pretty much have every mod. But these mods aren't just straight up buffs all the way, because each mod comes with one positive stat and also one negative stat. So it's more just a pick and choose of what fits your build and what you want to go for. There won't necessarily be a best in slot mod to always use. At least that is what I think right now. But yeah, that is weapons and weapon mods. We knew most of this stuff already. I just wanted to go over it because, you know, you might have missed it. But now let's start off with all the new stuff, because we're going to talk about gear. And to start off with, random gear mod slots are back, which means that every gear item can come with a random amount of mod slots instead of a fixed number like in a Division 1, where a chest piece always has 2 slots and a mask always has 1 slot. That's not really going to be the case anymore in a Division 2, because as you can see here, I have a chest piece that has 3 mod slots and a chest piece that has 1 mod slot. Now, there's a trade-off for getting more mod slots, because the more mod slots you have on a chest piece, the less stat rolls it will come with. So for example, on the chest piece that had 3 mod slots, I only had 2 stat rolls. But then on the chest piece with 1 mod slot, I had 4 stat rolls. So it isn't always the case that a mod slot is by definition making a gear piece better. It's again going to be the case of, what do I want for this build? What do I need for this build? But yeah, the random gear mod slots, they're back. And of course, that means we're also going to get gear mods again. And unlike the weapon mods, which, as I said, they're unlocked after completing the game, gear mods do actually fall into the loot pool, and you can actually loot gear mods. You have to grind for them. And gear mods, they are actually pretty substantial, because they come with up to 3 stat rolls at a time, as you can see here. Which means that if you have a chest piece with 3 mod slots, you're going to have a lot of stats on just one piece. For example here, I've got 14 different stat rolls just on this one gear piece alone. I've got 9 from the 3 different mods, because each of these mods come with 3 stat rolls. Then I have 2 stat rolls that already came with the chest piece, and then 3 more, because this chest piece, of course, also is from a certain brand set, which if I get 3 of the same brand set items, I unlock all those 3 stat rolls. And then the chest piece also has a talent. So yeah, 14 stat rolls plus a talent. And I hope you can start to see how this can probably get pretty crazy once you really dig into it and start to mess around with all the different type of builds. Something interesting that I noted about the talents on the gear as well is that the gear talents also have to be unlocked this time around by having enough stat rolls of a certain category, and in some weird cases you even are required to have less than any given amount of stat rolls from a certain category. For example, here I am required to have less than 2 stat rolls out of the shield category, which might make it hard to integrate this talent into certain builds, because I mean 2 stat rolls is really not that much, taking in mind that my chest piece already had 14 different stat rolls to begin with. And looking at all these stat rolls, we can also see a whole bunch of new stats on this sheet alone. We have plus experience on weak point kills, plus explosive resistance, and protection from elites is also making a return. Weapon handling is now also something you can spec into as well, which is, I guess, a combination of both accuracy and stability combined. And things like optimal range and headshot damage are also stats that are widely available on the gear itself and not just on the weapon or the weapon talents. So really, if this trend that I see here keeps going, I'm not that worried anymore about build diversity as I was in the past. I will say though that some of these mods, they come with a lot more specific buffs that are only applicable to 1 or 2 different builds in the game probably, because in the Division we had stat rolls such as SMG damage and assault rifle damage, which then buffed the SMG or buffed the assault rifle, but didn't really do anything for the other type of weapons. And in the Division 2, they sort of expanded on this because we also have SMG Critical Hit Chance, or SMG Critical Hit Damage, instead of a more generic Critical Hit Chance and Critical Hit Damage that just works with all weapon classes. So that does mean that, there's a lot more builds possible, and there's a lot more builds that are more specialized, and there's more to grind for, and I can really see myself enjoying this, but it does mean that we're also going to need a lot of stash space, and then I mean a lot of stash space, because just to hoard on these items, just to get every item once, we're probably going to need a couple hundred slots. And from what I've seen in my beta so far, we only have 50 slots in the stash, which isn't all that much. So I hope that's still something that's being adjusted before the final game. Because I also remember that they're doing something with more stash space for the gold edition or something. And if that's going to be the case with a limited stash of 50, well, I'm going to tell you right now, people are not going to be happy. Some of the very clever people that are watching this video might have also noticed that every gear piece also has a skin slot right now. Not just the backpack, every gear item. So weapons, masks, knee pads, and even the skills. Yes, skills have slots for skins as well. Or slots for effects, so to speak. So maybe your drone looks entirely different, that sort of stuff. So yeah, they're definitely looking at doing more stuff with the Vanity as well. Which isn't a surprise, because I really do believe that the loot boxes that were in the Division 1 are also making a return in the Division 2. But again, no information on that yet. So yeah, let's just continue with the video. We've had weapons, we've had gear, so let's move over to the skills now. Now, in the Division 1, you probably know that we had performance mods, which were gear mods that specifically boosted up certain stats on your skills. And as I explained in the previous video, performance mods are basically gone in the Division 2, but they've been replaced by another type of mod that you can equip on your skills now. For example, on the Seeker Mine, you now have 3 mod slots, just like you have mod slots on a weapon. In the Seeker Mine's case, we have a driving slot, a targeting slot, and a payload slot, which each allow you to equip a different type of mod. For example, in my play session, I found a delivery system upgrade, which then spawns 5 extra mines when you use the Seeker Mine multi-mine mod, which is the thing that you drop on the ground and then it splits off into a lot of little mines, the same thing we had in the Division 1. But I wasn't able to showcase how this works because with my character, my skill power was not high enough. As I mentioned in a previous video as well, skill power has been reworked. It no longer buffs your raw stats, the raw stats of your skills, but instead having enough skill power allows for these special mods to be equipped on your skill. So I didn't have enough skill power here, but later on in my play session I did swap to a character that had more skill power, and I found another mod, this time for the drone, which would increase its damage by 16%. But then I was running the healing drone, so I wouldn't say I got the most value out of it, but that's basically how the skill mods work right now. That should give you a general idea. And this is, this made me think a lot as well, because I do like where they're going with this. I really do. But then again, we have 8 different skills in the game. Each of those skills have 3 different slots. And if you get a mod for any of those slots, it fits in that specific slot and only that, nothing else. So you get a Seeker Mine payload slot mod. It only fits in the Seeker Mine payload slot, and then it's not useful for anything else, right? So if you're farming for gear mods or skill mods, it's going to be hoarding these things like crazy, because farming for a specific one for your build, that's not going to be easy. And with the stash only being 50, I think we're going to run into some issues really, really fast here. So I just want to bring that up again. We're probably going to need more than 50 stash space. But yeah, as some of you might have noticed, a gear score is back as well. As soon as you hit level 30, all the gear that you get is rated by gear score again and not level. The highest I've seen so far is 350. I assume that this will be the cap at launch, but it is possible that when we get gear sets or exotic weapons, which we haven't even seen any footage of yet, that gear score amount is going to be a lot higher. And of course, this is probably also something that's going to be increased with future DLC. Before I end this video, I also quickly wanted to scan over the vanity menu. We don't really see a lot here because I didn't have any vanity items, but we can at least see the categories. We have, again, hats, shirts, pants, and all that stuff that all returns. But this time around, sunglasses are now also vanity items that you can collect, and not something that you select to have in the character creation menu and then forever have sunglasses in midwinter. That was kind of funny, I guess. Face masks are also returning. I assume that they will, just like in the Division 1, be tied to special rewards. And we have these things that you can hang off your backpack now, like the teddy bear, which you get for completing all the shields, I guess. I couldn't see it here because it wasn't properly implemented yet, but this is the general menu of the vanity items. So yeah, overall, as you probably already noticed from this video when I was talking about all this stuff, I'm pretty happy with all of it. Of course, it has yet to be seen what the differences are between the endgame builds. I've only seen a mix match of high-ends and purple so far, which also, I'm pretty sure also contributed to making the time to kill a lot more lengthy than it should have been, which then kinda hampered the experience for me quite a bit. But as far as character building goes, I'm liking what I see so far. It's a big step up from the Division 2 at E3, and maybe it's even a big step up from the Division 1, despite the game not having main stats. What I also like about a lot of the talents and the gear mods is that some of these actually have weird in-game effects, instead of it just being something that is affecting your stats, so to speak. Getting 5 extra mines just because of a mod, that is something that the Division 1 definitely didn't have. Or this talent, which allows you to hold the grenade button to cook your grenade in your hands. And then you can throw it and it will explode a lot faster. Pretty cool stuff. I see a lot more variety here. A lot more things to play around with. So yeah, I'm happy about this. Anyway, that's going to wrap up this video. I do want to mention that the day after tomorrow, the closed beta drops. And I'm going to be streaming it over on my Twitch. You can find a link in the description if you're interested in watching that. And as always, I'll see you guys later. Or like they say in the Netherlands, zie je later.